So our topic for today is entitled True Faith is Fixed on Jesus. True faith is fixed on Jesus. Later on, why we entitled it is based on the Apostle Peter's reaction to Jesus walking on water. I found out helpful to kind of cross-reference John chapter 6. It has the same, the same record, but a few details has been added by Matthew and even Mark. It's not that they are not in agreement, but it's just like filling together so we can see a bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Just like what is the the narrative last week where Jesus feeds the 5,000. Mm-hmm. The only miracles that the four gospel writers have recorded it together. This one only three, right? John, Matthew, and Mark. But today I'm going to kind of go from John to Matthew, and then John, Matthew, and then referencing also with Mark. I would like to highlight in John chapter Justin, you can just, I'll tell you. Okay, so in verse 15, so Jesus, perceiving that they were intending to come to take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. Mm-hmm. The same is true in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 23. What's the reason? The reason Jesus dismissed the disciples and withdrew from the crowd because of the political intentions of the crowd. How did he know it? He was omniscient. His supernatural knowledge discerned the crowd's intention to make him king. That's not his purpose, to be a political, rebellious leader against Rome. No. So this would jeopardize the will of God, the salvation by crucifixion, right? So in Matthew 14, verse 23, you will notice that after he had sent the crowds away, he went up to the mountain by himself. This time, the apostle or Matthew mentioned to pray. To pray. In John, he would say he went alone, period. Here you could say when it was, he went there alone to pray. So what lessons, what insight we can glean this? This is a moment of what we call is solitude. Seeking solitude alone with God. For Jesus, this is an important priority. Remember what he did. In verses 13 and 14, after he learned about the death of John the Baptist, he sought solitude. Mm-hmm. And then, after feeding the 5,000, of course, physically got tired, went on solitude. So from here we can say that after a busy day's work, solitude is important. So that Jesus did not dwell on being alone or being tired or busy, but he went on to the Father. Because spending time with the Father re-energizes his physicality. For us, we can derive this, that our spending time alone with God will nurture our vital relationship. Not only it will nurture our vital relationship, but it equips us to the next life's challenge or struggles. Hence, like when we did our fasting, that is kind of spending time alone with God. Okay? So to nurture our vital relationship with the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and to equip us. So that in our today's activities, it can drain our spiritual battery. Go here, go there, work here, travel here and there. Physically drained, but at the same time, spiritually draining. And that is why seeking solitude is not escaping from reality. It is where you and I find strength. You and I find strength to face the next challenge. As Charles Stanley wrote in his book, Jesus spent a good deal of his time alone with God in prayer. He made this practice not only to make requests, but to stay in close fellowship with the Father and enjoy the Father. That's what Dr. Charles Stanley wrote. Now, the next slide will move us to the boat. Isn't it that you are energized that this boat, one of the many boats during the time of Jesus, has been discovered in 1986 and it's now in the museum? You know, when you imagine the size of that, the length of that boat is from here up to where Nicole is sitting, and the width is from there up to here. That's the physical boat. And that's the remnant of the cedar planks made of the wood, right? So, now when the evening came, his disciples went down to the Sea of Galilee, and after getting into the boat just like this, they started to cross, or rowing. And it already had begun dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. And now when I am looking at this, a boat of the first century, 27 feet long, 8 feet wide, and you know what? They were saying that 50 people can sit on that boat.
50?
No, 15.
Oh, 15.
15, right? 15 people. So, I am so delighted to learn when I was looking for resources. Man, the Sea of Galilee exists, the boat exists, Jesus exists. And even when you look at the map of Israel, the Sea of Galilee is there. Right? There are a couple of significant events that happened around the Sea of Galilee. One is the feeding of the 5,000. The other is the calling of Peter and Andrew around the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on water, the one that we are talking about, where Jesus calmed the violent storm, where Jesus taught his disciples, where Jesus appeared to his disciples at one point in time, where he healed a lot of sickness and diseases. Later on, you will find out why. Because, next slide na. You will see in this map that Galilee has been divided into two, the upper and the lower. And you will see the surrounding cities, Capernaum, where Jesus spent did his 40-some miracles in Capernaum, around the Sea of Galilee, Chorazin, Bethsaida, Magdala, and then where Pastor Justin started the feeding of 5,000 in Tiberias. Tiberia is the Hebrew name. It's a city located northeastern part of Israel, the western shore of Sea of Galilee. Look at that one. That Sea of Galilee, you can still see it the same. And this is from the time of Jesus, right? So Galilee, the upper Galilee, and the lower Galilee with a deep valley running between them. Okay? So upper Galilee will climb up to 3,000 feet above sea level, while the water is gushing through the lower part that contains valleys with rich soil suitable for agriculture and farming. No wonder a lot of people are in the lower Galilee area, right? So that upper Galilee is sometimes called, according to Matthew, the Galilee of the Gentiles. Why? Because the upper Galilee are, are the habitations of the Phoenicians, the Syrians, the Cenotians. People who lived in Galilee were called Galileans. Galileans and Judeans, they have distinction. Galileans have a distinct dialect. Remember when Peter was about to disown Jesus? You are Galilean. See your accent. I know. No. A Judean girl. Because of their distinct accent. So that Lower Galilee is making it an ideal for densely populated settlements. And did you know that Galilee, or the Sea of Galilee, is a substantial source of fresh water? So that even until now, the nation Israel is relying on the fresh water coming from Sea of Galilee. And that is why, other than the source of fresh water, it added a flourishing fishing industry to the region. And not only that, it includes the exportation of olives and grains. Olives and grains. Therefore, the gospel narratives are also set in the lower Galilee. Why? Because of the major roadways Roman Empire crossing through Galilee. And that is why for Jesus and the apostles, this is a strategic initial mission to launch the gospel. No wonder in Capernaum alone, 40 plus miracles Jesus did in that one, in 3.5 years. Now, next slide na. Now, moving to verse 18, right? In verse 18, then the sea arose because a great wind was blowing. What is that? You know why? Because of this condition, right? Look at that. Physically, the circumference is 53 kilometers. The length is 21 kilometers. The width is 13 kilometers. Not that big. But the thing is, the elevation fluctuates from 700 feet to 689 feet above or below sea level. And the one that's primary supplying the water, fresh water, is coming from the Jordan River, plus the underground springs. The underground springs. Mm-hmm. And one more thing. Historians recorded that cooler air from the northern mountains, Mount Hermon, southern tablelands, rushes down into the lake and it displaces the warm, moist air, causing the violent churning of the water. These geological features make it subject to sudden windstorm. It causes extremely high waves, and such storms occur regularly. So for the fishermen, that's normal. But even though it's normal, it's still fearful. That's where they catches fish to make a living. So for Jesus to specifically target Sea of Galilee to minister and to perform miracles, it's strategic. Launching the gospel. Why? Because a significant number of people who are sick will visit the Sea of Galilee because during that time, they believe it has a restorative climate and medical hot springs. No wonder Jesus goes where the fish are, where most people are. Those who are hopeless that because of their ailments. It's just like, the hospital is located in the lower Galilee. Let's go there. Let's minister. You know that when you look at the map now, it might not probably worded Sea of Galilee because it's worded Yam, Y-A-M, Kinneret, K-I-N-E-E-R-E-T. And today, the state of Israel supports this commercial fishing industry because the Sea of Galilee, or Yam Kinneret, is the main source of their drinking water, as I alluded a while ago. So now, cross-referencing, what was the time when Jesus walked on water, drawing closer to them? According to Matthew 14:24, the boat was already a long distance from the land. Some translation, the boat was already many stadia from the land. Battered by the waves, for the wind was contrary, and in the fourth watch, that is the time, the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came to them walking. What is the fourth watch, and how do we understand that? During the time of Jesus, the Roman military divided the night from 6 p.m. to 6 in the morning. That's their night. They divided it into 4 by 3 hours. So that when you calculate it, the fourth watch is between 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's the fourth watch, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And now our next slide will tell us the miracle itself, right? When Jesus, in John chapter 6, verse 19, then when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, which is 4 to 6 kilometers, they saw Jesus. In John's gospel, everyone saw Jesus walking, drawing near to the boat. That's why I loved our singing. All the praise and worship. Jesus walking in water, drawing closer to us. Oh, I love it. They saw Jesus walking on the sea, drawing closer, and they were frightened. Why? Because Mark and Matthew wrote that they saw a ghost. They saw Jesus, but they mistook him as a ghost. And they were terrified. Who would that be? You know what I mean? So, what truth can we glean from this John chapter 6, verse 19? That walking on the sea is a powerful demonstration of Jesus' control over creation. Walking on the sea is Jesus' powerful demonstration of his control over his creation that he created. In other words, in a scientific term, Jesus suspended the law of gravity. That everything that has weight will come down. No, Jesus is still there, right? So that Jesus is truly the Lord of all creation. There is also a song like that, right? Lord of all creation. Why? How do we know that? In John chapter 1 verse 3, all things came into being through Jesus. Apart from Jesus, nothing came into being that has been made. So they saw Jesus. Their reaction was they were terrified. They thought they were seeing a ghost, according to Mark 6:49. But if they had thought, if they really understand the meaning of the 18 miracles that Jesus did, walking on the water, as I researched, is the 19th miracle. And this is, I think, the 4th in the Gospel of John. This is the 19th, right? So if they had really thought that Jesus could do all this against the natural law, walking on water is just one of them. But they did not. That's why they could not accept this miracle, because they were blinded by fear. They were blinded by fear. They didn't expect Jesus to come, and they weren't prepared to embrace him at that moment. So that faith is the mindset that expects God to act. Faith is the mindset that expects God to act. And if we do the reverse, then that is not faith. So, in our situation, we normally face spiritual storms. We normally face the physical storms like we have, and even emotional storms, and we are being tossed to and fro like a small boat in a big lake. But in spite of terrifying circumstances, we can still trust Jesus. We can still fix our eyes on Jesus amid the storms, amid the high waves of life. So when they were terrified, how did Jesus respond while still walking? In Mark 6:49, he recorded that when they saw him walking in the sea, they supposed that it was a ghost. They cried out, and they all saw him, and they were terrified. But immediately, Jesus spoke to them and said, this is a beautiful passage in this. Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. Take courage, be cheerful, in the King James Version. It is I am, it is who I am. Do not be afraid. It could be translated, I am here. He identified himself as God, just like in Exodus 3:14, when Moses said, who should I say that sent me? I am who I am. Not I was, not I will be, I am the present progressive. It affirms the divinity of Jesus Christ while in the flesh. I am the bread of life. That will be our next topic. And, and I've shared a couple of Sundays ago that at least John recorded the 7 I ams. So the first I am probably will be coming next Sunday. I am the bread of life. So the disciples were surprised to see Jesus walking beside water, but they should have realized that Jesus would have helped them when they are in trouble. The disciples were really afraid, but Jesus' presence calmed their fears. Eventually, Jesus calmed their fears. When we all experience fear like the disciples, we have the choice to stay fearful and frightened, terrified, or we can still trust, embrace Jesus' presence. There is peace amidst the storm when we fix our eyes on Jesus. The next slide na. Matthew 14:28. There you are. Then Peter said, Lord, if it's you, then command me to come to you on the water. Of the 12, only Peter raised his hand. He says, Lord, if it is you. He did not use the pronoun, well, Lord, command us. No, command me to come to you. Peter was not putting to Jesus to test. He was just on that part of time that, is it really Jesus? He was juggling or fighting his unbelief in order to validate his unbelief. Wow. Lord, tell me, command me. An insight we can glean on that one is we may not walk on water like Peter in our physical day and age, but we do walk through hard situations, tough situations, difficult situations. That is our storms. It may not be in the waters of life. That will be our high waves, difficult circumstances around us. But the next slide will tell us that, but seeing the wind, became frightened, and Peter began to sink, and he cried, Lord, save me. We were not told by Matthew, Mark, and John how many steps he did. But when he requested, Jesus granted. Let me walk on water. Jesus granted. But every theologian and every understanding of this is while he fixed his eyes on Jesus amidst the waters and the high waves of the Sea of Galilee, he was stepping 1, 2, 3, 4 closer. My guess is this. When he was just arm reach distance from Jesus, that's when he probably looked to the left and to the right and he's still sinking. And that's why we said, Lord, save me. Jesus' hands was there. Not probably 3 feet away or something like that one. Close to Jesus already. That is just my guess. I may be wrong, right? But Jesus said, you of little faith, why did you doubt? He says, anak, bakit? Although we start with our good intentions, sometimes our faith falters, which is true. My faith falters so many times, just like Peter. This doesn't necessarily mean we have failed. Our Christian walk will not always be victorious because of our physicality, because of our weakness. But that doesn't mean we have failed miserably. Peter's faith faltered, but he reached out to Jesus, the only one who could help him. So we can learn from Peter that when our faith faltered, we can always say, Lord, save me. Yes, Peter was afraid, but he still looked to Jesus So that when you and I are apprehensive about the troubles of life, the presence of Jesus brings peace. The presence of Jesus brings His arms. And all we have to do is just hold on. So that in Mark chapter 6 verse 51, we can still read that when He got into the boat, the wind stopped. John says, when He got into the boat, immediately they are on the land. Another miracle. For they had not gained insight from the incident of loaves, but their heart was hardened. And that's the reason for assuming that the one walking on the water is a ghost, because according to Mark, they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves and the fish, because their heart was hardened, even though they ate the loaves and the fish. They benefited from that, but still, they did not embrace Jesus fully. Let's move on to the last slide. John 6:21. So, they were willing to receive Jesus into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land. See? Just like that. If Jesus walked between probably 3 to 4 miles, and the wind is what? 23 kilometers. Man, the boat just like that. Where they were going. Matthew records, when they got into the boat, the wind stopped. That is the same. And those who were in the boat worshipped Him and declared Him, "You are truly the Son of God." The first mention of the apostles' declaration and affirmation that Jesus is truly the Son of God. After the 19th or the 20th miracle, because the boat got into that, maybe that is the 20th. You know what I mean? That is when. So what can we learn from this? A truth that worship often follows deliverance. Worship often follows deliverance. They were delivered from the high waves and the storms of the Sea of Galilee. As soon as Jesus went into the boat, boom, it just slide in and they're there. So, what's the purpose of storm from this story? That the storms deepen our understanding of who Jesus is. The storms of life deepen our understanding of who Jesus is, and trials often lead to greater worship. Trials, difficulties often lead to greater worship and clear revelation. What are trials? If I may use, probably is when we are applying for job, one after the other. We thought that we are accepted, and a thank you letter says no. You know what I mean? And then you apply again. I have learned about a lot of trials from 1994 even until now. But this, it often leads us to greater worship and clear revelation. So, from Jesus calming the storm because He was there, we normally think that peace is found when the waves of life are calm. The waves of life are not calm because Jesus promised not a smooth sailing, but a safe landing. They were sailing in the rough seas, but they sailed safely. Jesus promised to always be with us, and it has been said that peace is not the absence of problem. Peace is found in the presence of Jesus. That true peace is found in the presence of Jesus. True peace is found in the presence of Jesus amidst the high waves and the storms of life. What about the lessons we can learn from Jesus walking on water and invited Peter? That Jesus, yes, invited Peter to leave the boat. You want to experience walking in water? Leave the boat. Not just leave the boat and stand there. Come toward me. It's not that, Oh, okay, okay. And then go back to the boat. No, he got out of the boat and used our imagination. He walked toward Jesus. What an experience. That Peter experienced walking on water. It teaches us that even in the middle of storm of life, the presence of Jesus never left. That if we focus our eyes on Jesus, if we fix our eyes on Jesus, we will experience true peace. True peace. And therefore, this true peace comes from true faith. And in here, in our narrative, true faith is stepping out in the boat of life and walking towards Jesus. That is true faith. Stepping out in the boat of life, leave the boat of life, and keep focused, walking on Jesus. In another translation, that we need to take the risk and trust Jesus. Just like Peter. He took the risk because from Jesus' word, come. He took the risk. This is the natural. You cannot. He did not debate, I may sink. No. He just come. He got out of the boat and walked. He enjoyed walking. But he took the risk by stepping out of the boat and walking in faith toward Jesus. Peter stepped out of the boat and walked in faith toward Jesus. He focused his eyes on Jesus. Application, not on religion, not on vocation, not on donation, but on Jesus, the person. So like the Apostle Peter, you and I can step out of the boat. And yes, we will be overcome by fear and we will experience sinking, but Jesus is right there to save us. We might stumble, but we won't drown because Jesus will extend his hands of help. Stepping out of the boat of life is the first step. True faith fixed on Jesus, because without Jesus, we will sink. And that is why these are the lessons that we can learn. That true peace brought about by true faith is found in the presence of Jesus, even amidst the storms of life. Again, true faith requires stepping out of the boat of life and walking towards Jesus. Third, true faith is fixed on Jesus because without Jesus we all sin. Because this true faith equals trusting in Jesus amidst the storm, not just after the storm. Why? Because you and I will face fear. You and I will face troubles. But you know what? Jesus meets us in our weakness and even in our courageous state. The goal of every storm is to deepen our faith so we can experience true worship. Let us pray.